Hi, good afternoon. I'm actually leaving this recording as I would be leaving for the States, and I'll be away for the next 2 3 weeks. In fact, so I'll be leaving you probably some 10 videos about the lessons that you need to read through. I know and I'm trusting that you are responsible enough to read, to listen to the recordings and to reflect and also to read the text, the actual text. But for now, I want you to focus. We will be talking about your project. We will be talking about your research paper and how you're going to go about it. I know many of you are almost halfway done, and many of you are in the process of wrapping things up. But what I'm really hoping from your paper is that this paper should be a conversation of the three worlds as you would be approaching the text. Okay, so now I will be discussing about the three worlds, the three worlds in the writing of your research paper. As we have been discussing, there are three worlds that I want you to be very aware of and very much always at the back of your minds every time you would be approaching the text. So the world of the text, the world within the text, the world in front of the text. So these are the three worlds that are always in conversation every time you would be reading a text. Before, many of the scholars are focusing individually from these worlds. So there are those who are focusing on the author-centered approaches, which means to say that they would be looking closely into the world behind the text. So they will be looking at the worldview of the author. What could have been the hopes and aspirations? What was the context of the author? So this is where many of those studies of the past, the archaeology for one, these are the scientific ways of really looking into what was life then and be able to really interpret through that. But the focus of this kind of approach is that they were focusing more on the author. Okay, the author. The second one is what we call the world within the text, is also known as the text-centered approach. Now, so in order to understand the meaning of the text, many would just say, let's just focus on the text. I mean, after we don't care about the reductions, we don't care about the sources, we don't care about how it became what it is now. The important thing is what is the meaning of the text as it is now in front of us now. So regardless of what could have been the struggles and the hopes and aspirations of the author, what could have been the challenges during their time, it doesn't matter now. What matters now is the text itself. So we just have to find meaning in the text itself. The third one, the world in front of the text before, is that it's focusing only on the reader. So for example, if I'm reading as an Asian, that's all that matters. So I'm going to approach the text as an Asian. There are also those feminists who would be approaching the text as a feminist, as a woman, as a black American, as an African American, as an African, as Hispanics. So we bring into the text our own worldview, and that's all that matters. But the purpose of the exercise and the training is that what I'm proposing is that we can find meaning on our readings from a conversation between the world of the text and your world as a reader, and at the same time a conversation informed by the world of the author. So you do have the text in front of you, and then you let the text speak itself, but at the same time you bring your own world. So as an Asian coming from a third world country, how am I going to read the text? But lest I'd be only focusing on what I think the meaning of the text is, my conversation with the text should be informed by the world of the author. So in this exercise, we would be having to exercise two things: exegesis and interpretation. So sometimes these tend to be in interchangeable terms, but they are not. Okay, exegesis are the varied set of activities which a hermeneutic performs upon a text in order to make a meaningful inferences. So these set of activities would include, looking into the results of archaeology, the social scientists, the data from the social scientists, trying to figure out what was the world then. So that was an exegesis, bringing back the world of, once you approach the text, you bring into the fore as well the world as it was then. What was the world then? So these are the activities which a hermeneut, in order for him to understand closely or better the text, he has to also see what was the worldview of the author then. Interpretation, on the other hand, is the task of explaining or drawing out the implications of that understanding from your exegesis for contemporary readers and hearers. Okay, so interpretation is next. Now, so you don't interpret the text without having to go through the rigors of exegesis. And also, if you're going to make a homily, to make a good interpretation, to make a good presentation of your reading, you just don't end up by the exegesis. Okay, you have to also present. How are you going to draw out implications? The question would be, what now? Okay, what now that I know this, what is it for me today? So these are the interpretations. So getting into the details of it, the first thing that you need to do, for example, if you would be choosing Genesis, okay, and the theme that you would be working on is about blessing, you need to look into the text. What is the key text that you want to study about? Probably Genesis 12:1. When God called Abraham and I will make you a blessing to everyone. I will bless those who bless you, but I will curse those who curse you. So that would be the world behind the text. So what you would be doing is that you try to go and make a research on the historical and cultural background, as well as the ideological world of the author. What could have been their world when they wrote the book of Genesis? So if we are presupposing, or if we are accepting that the book of Genesis was written in exile in Babylon, so that would be the kind of view or world that you want to bring into the fore, so that you would be well informed, so that you would be having really a good exegesis of the text. So you have to bring in the historical and cultural background, as well as the ideological world of the author. You also need to do the source criticism. Okay, what could possibly be the sources of these texts? For example, in the book of Genesis, we talked about the creation story might have been coming from the Babylonian myths. So these are the sources. And then you go also into the social scientific criticism. What was the community of Jesus during his time? What was the social condition, or the financial condition of a carpenter? Are they the rich? Are they the middle class? Are they the low class people? These things should inform you, so that in the reading of the text, so in understanding who Jesus Christ, for example, and what would be his what could have been his status in the community, we need to know who are the carpenters. Okay, what are the works of a carpenter? How are they in the society? Are they in the upper class, the middle class, or the lower class? So that you'd be able to understand what could possibly be the kind of a lifestyle, perhaps, of Jesus. Now, these are the things that you have to, in a way, consider if you're going to look into the world of the text. So the world within the text, which is the second one, as soon as you have that, you need to also look into the entire world of, for example, the entire world of Abraham in Genesis. What was its world? What kind of world that was painted by or illustrated by the author? So you need to know what your actual text. You just don't. I'm not expecting you to give a discussion of the entire book of Genesis. 2-3 verses is enough. as long as you do have a hold of how is this verse related to the theme that you are writing about. Okay, so it's not something that you have to talk about the entire book of Genesis and discuss from chapter 1 up until chapter 50. It's not going to be possible for you to do it in a 10-page paper. So just look into what is the world of the text, or what is this text all about. What is the literary genre and the literary form of these texts I am talking about or I'm reading. So if you're reading about Abraham, so it's a narrative. What is a narrative then? Okay, what is the purpose of a narrative during the time of the hearers of the Israelites before? And the third one is the world in front of the text. Okay, so what happens when we read? This would be our question. Okay, how are we affected? So if before, when the slaves before when the black African Americans, of course they were black, the African Americans would be reading about the letters of Paul, especially that talks about slavery. Many of them would find it uncomfortable, that Saint Paul in a way was accepting of slavery. But then you have to understand that that was the world of Saint Paul then. Okay, so we just don't really interpret it as the way we are reading it today. So how are we affected by it? So that would be the world, what happens when we read, and then what the reader brings to the text. What are you bringing? So, for example, what would be a man or a seminarian from North Cotabato, okay, Jethro for one, okay, or Renato, what are you bringing into reading as a person from Tagum, no? And now reading the text as the one who is a bit far from your family, how are you reading it, no? How are you reading about the 72 disciples sent by Jesus on a mission when you are yourself really feeling it? How would it feel? So these are the things that you have to consider as the one bringing the text. What are your presuppositions? When you read the text, what are your presuppositions? What are your own biases? What are your own worldviews? You have to know what are your worldviews and be aware of it. What are your biases? What are your paradigms? What are the lenses that you're using every time you are reading the text? So what I'm saying is, in this research paper of yours, this is actually a discipline that you would be able to use in your homiletics. And every reading that you do, it's good for you to always have the conversation of the exegesis and the interpretation. You just don't make the interpretation without a solid ground of your exegesis. Or you just don't stay on exegesis and leave it as it is. You have to have a proper interpretation of it to make it applicable to the hearers of today. So this is a 7 to 10 page paper, and I'm very much impressed to many of you who submitted your proposals, and I want you to continue it. If you do have questions, if you do have some concerns, feel free to send me a note. You can send it to my email at epandero@yahoo.com. You can use my messenger to do that, or you can stay on this website and leave your comments below. Okay, you can do that, and this is not an exercise of me knowing that you haven't done your research, or this is not about me looking into what you've missed, but I want to know how much you have attempted to really understand the theme and how the text elaborates the theme or presents the theme, and how the world behind the text help you understand the theme. And now, as the one reading it, okay, when you read the text, when the text is so alive right in front of you, what are your worldviews that you're bringing? What are your paradigms that you're bringing? Is there any difference if you're born on, you are a rich seminarian reading the text, or you are a seminarian who is struggling financially? Is there any difference? What kind of worldviews are you having? So yeah, these are the things that I want you to do, and I hope you'd be able to really make good in this paper, because this is a discipline that you'd be really be using for the rest of your life as a priest, and even not as a priest. In whatever text that you're reading, you need to understand the interplay of these three worlds. So I hope you to hear good things about your paper, and yeah, see you by October then. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye. And I'm so kidding.